even if someone had the ability to list out the things that are a priority, like you just listed, they're already like A- in business, right? Most don't even have a clue. In my experience, especially in healthcare, doctors are not taught, and that was where I felt called into that. They're not taught business. So going into it, I think the first thing that I look at with all businesses and entrepreneurs or business owners is organization.
Welcome to the podcast. Nathan Newberry here, your host. I'm super pumped to hear the life and story of Adam Lamb. He's on the call here, and you guys are going to hear his backstory and his expertise of building companies, selling companies, having a coaching company, helping business owners and a lot of people in the medical world. He's a family man, author, speaker. You're going to hear a lot of cool stuff and expertise around his business knowledge. So stay tuned, stay to the end here, and we're going to be able to really see some more ins and outs and tactics of how to grow the business. If you want some free training on how to build a brand, down below in the show notes, I'm going to give a free gift to you of how to build sales teams, run ads, build a solid brand. Go check that out in the show notes. Want to give that gift to you right off the beginning. Adam, as we're diving into the podcast, one of the questions I asked everybody is, what is high performance? What does that look like? What's the definition of that? And how do you apply that to your life?
That's a great question. I think high performance is getting clear on what's important to you and making sure to maximize the time that you're awake and asleep to fulfill that, right? So living and sticking to a calendar, what time you get up, what you're committed to, everything in my calendar, whether it's going to the gym, date night with my wife, son's soccer game, daughter's cheerleading, whatever it is, I put everything in the calendar. And then the goal for me is to hit all of those things on the calendar. Right. And so I think when you're doing that, you perform at a high level.
And how do you serve clients right now? You've had many businesses, but where's your focus right now? And how do people know of you and what do you serve?
Yeah. The main thing I focus on right now is coaching doctors or healthcare entrepreneurs and really just helping them transition, whether it's from provider or owner operator, to actually becoming an entrepreneur, right? And just taking a zoom out from the business of the day to day and how we can implement systems and processes to give them way more time back and earn more money. I've built and sold multiple healthcare companies. I'm not a doctor. So there's a lot of areas of the business I couldn't do. And as an entrepreneur, I wanted to be strategic with doctors are expensive. So I wanted to make sure I could create systems and processes so that the doctor just had to do what I needed them to do so I could pay them the least that I had to pay them. And the business could operate and grow and scale. And so I take that same philosophy for them and say, hey, look, you're the doctor. You don't have to do all 50 of these things. You only really need to do these 5 things. And we can create a system and process to just put all that, serve it right up on a silver platter for you every day. So maybe you're spending 2 hours what you used to spend 8, right? Mm-hmm. And then with that extra 6 hours a day or whatever we can help them get back, we can learn to scale the business, focus on what do we want to do next. Do we want to add another business, whatever it is. So that's in a nutshell what we work on with doctors.
And then your 1% thing.
Yeah, so 1%, that's the model. Yeah, so the platform is the 1%, which is it's about living in the top 1% in all areas of life. And so going back to your first question on what is high performance is like having a marriage that's on fire, being fit and having good energy, making a lot of money, having a relationship with God and community and serving and like giving beyond yourself, right? So like that's a top 1% performer. And so the 1% is the platform. And within the 1%, we have the 1% doctors. My wife and I are launching the 1% marriage where we're helping coach married couples. We're almost 20 years in and have navigated some pretty cool stuff together. And then we have the 1%, which is also like faith focused entrepreneurs that, want to, because that part could be lonely. I think that like to be successful in kind of a faith-based entrepreneur business can sometimes be a lonely place. And so, a group of guys that also come together on the same 1% platform.
Totally. Love that. Now, when you started all of this, where did that all begin? Like, tell us the beginning of your story of maybe some struggles that you dealt with being an entrepreneur, because you've built and sold and scaled multiple different businesses. How did that all start? Where was that the origin story?
Yeah, years ago, probably 15 plus, almost 20 years now. 20 years ago, I got into mortgages, and I worked for a company called Quicken Loans. Before it was Quicken Loans, is Rock Financial, which was a brick and mortar. And then when we decided to do online mortgages, so switched everything to online, I saw a correlation of like how I could work with people throughout the country to do certain things, right? This mortgage, which is for most people the biggest financial deal that they'll ever do.
Mm.
And in that, but I loved healthcare, and I did like online coaching on the side, like before it was kind of a popular thing, just like through email. People would flip phone, take a picture of their menu. Hey, what do I eat? Stuff like that. And I saw a way to integrate this online model with the same process and tech that we're kind of doing with the mortgage stuff. And so that's why I started my first nationwide telemedicine company. So like, listen, I barely graduated high school. So I had to just read, right? Like that's where people are, how do you figure that out? I'm like, just do the work, read, research, right? I read DEA stuff, all the legal stuff, just figure out what, I was doing telemedicine. No one knew what it was basically until COVID hit. And, which then when COVID hit, and I was doing telemedicine for almost a decade before that, I became the telemedicine guy. And so whether it was some government agencies or some big healthcare players started reaching out to me like, hey, help us do telemedicine. And that's where I kind of shifted to the consulting side. And part of that was I just figured out systems and processes that didn't require me to be in the business all the time, because I wanted to have that like 4-hour work week, Tim Ferriss thing where it's like the business runs without me. Right. And so I had the time to kind of transition to the consulting side of it. So I had to like figure that piece out. And then once in figuring that piece out, I was realizing that like some of these docs I was helping totally change their business were slide back into the old model, and they keep coming back to me for help with something I already fixed. And I was like, dude, I fixed this. I showed you this. And then I realized it was their mindset. They couldn't let go of certain parts of the business. Right. And then I was like, oh, I need to help these guys shift their mind. I can, the business is easy, right? I've done it hundreds of times, but if I can't get them to see the way they work and the way they spend their time differently, they're going to slide right back to their comfort zone, which is seeing every patient all the time and, trading time for dollars. Right.
Yeah.
So that's what really launched the coaching piece for me.
You're an obsessed guy like I am. And I think we're wired a little bit different. Most of the people don't understand us. They don't understand why we're that way. And then we probably marry someone that doesn't understand us. I've been married for 13 years now. And my wife just now kind of like accepted the fact that I'm a little obsessed and a little bit different. And I just kind of accepted that myself and understanding that. How does that play a part with your marriage, other relationships with people, your kids, your business partners? How does that go into just the understanding and even, the mindset there too?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. And it's so true. And I think it takes, I'd say my wife is somewhat of an obsessive person too, which is good. She's very career focused. She's a 5 a.m., goes to the gym every day. Both pretty obsessive, which is cool. So we kind of like respect each other's game a little bit. And I think it would be tough to be in a relationship where you had to explain that sometimes or try to get them to see you for who you are. But it can also be lonely in the sense of, even, being a Christian and like wanting to be part of like men's groups and stuff. Like I want to talk about building $100 million companies, right? I want to talk about being like more fit, and I want to talk about buying more fun cars, and, and it's a small amount of people, the 1% that actually can live in that space. Right. So it can be kind of lonely. And even a lot of the guys that I coach, I work with, they're like doing weekend things, and they're like, oh my gosh, I want to pull my hair out. Like these people are so boring. All I want to talk about is sports and politics, right? Like it could be a struggle, and use the word like how to accept it. Like, and that's what it is. It's just accepting the fact that we're wired a little bit different, and that in order for us to truly be in that higher level of consciousness of like that top high performer places, we must be able to navigate through those uncomfortable or maybe boring situations and see where we can provide value. Right. I have to remind myself sometimes too, when I'm in a situation where it's like an obvious challenge that someone's sharing, and I want to just come in and coach, and I'm like, they're not paying you, Adam. Shut up, right? And so
Right.
like, just listen. They just want you to listen. If they wanted your advice, they'd hire you. And so you have to navigate that stuff. It's all part of personal growth, and what it boils down to really is the question that I ask everybody I work with is, what do you really want? And in the second part of that is like, do you want to be right or do you want to be happy? And it takes a lot of maturity to choose the path of happiness because we're geared to want to be right, right?
Mm.
Division, challenge, all that stuff is something that's we're surrounded in with society and even internally. And so focusing on, hey, I want to be happy. And so if being happy is keep my mouth shut, being happy is talking about sports, whatever, to fit in those situations, because I'm still going to go do what I want to do on my time, right?
Right. What about in terms of like, so you built strategies, you built systems. Was that out of a place that you needed it yourself? Or was that just something you drawn to that just like you like it really kind of being built out and systemized?
Yeah, I'm obsessed with finding a better way. I mean, to the point like when I get up off this desk here, there's an efficient like my brain is efficiently thinking like grab my phone, grab my water bottle. Like I'm thinking, what's the most efficient way to stand up from my desk?
Yeah.
What's the most efficient way to like walk and get into my car? Like my brain's just wired that. I don't know if it's like an OCD. I've been like that my whole life. Like,
Yeah.
and when you're young and immature, it can be very frustrating, like traffic, right? It'd be something that's like clearly where it's like, dude, why are you driving? There can be some frustration in that. And so, but it's given me a great skill set in building business because I can see problems and I can see the solution where things should be more efficient, more smooth, make more sense uh, across the board, whether it's from a customer service, like I mentioned earlier, like making things super simple for the doctor. Instead of taking 20 minutes, it takes them 3 minutes because everything comes to one place. And, I'm just obsessed with that,
Yeah.
right? Like so obsessed with really like finding a better way of doing everything. The challenge can be though, is like to shut that off at home, right? Because,
Totally.
entrepreneurially, when you're solving problems all day long and then you come home, well, it's easy to point out the dish in the sink and and then like you suck to be around. So I had to learn how to shut that off. And, a lot of the guys I coach, because they're all type A problem solvers, I have to teach them how to shut that off, right? How to change that energy of like this intense version of ourselves, which is how we like to operate,
Mm-hmm.
to this chill version that's like warm and inviting, right? Because if I come home and I'm like to my wife like a ninja, guess what she's going to do? She's on guard, and then she doesn't feel safe. My kids don't feel safe, right? Not that they're going to be attacked, but that it's just how am I going to navigate dad? So learning and teaching other people to like shift that gear down. How do I
Mm-hmm.
transition into priming myself to walk into the house or walk into whatever it is, or I have to be a different version of that of myself, right?
Totally.
And it comes from accepting that we are psychopath, obsessive people and realizing that it's not okay for everybody else. Because a lot of guys are like, everybody's an idiot. And it's like, well, they're not. They're just not like you. But you're an idiot if you can't shift, right? So you got to
Mm.
shift and bring that down. So I think if
That's not
that's,
easy to do at all, Adam. Like I think many people that are on this podcast are wired like us. And the way I designed this podcast is just being able to have someone that's, washing the dishes, walking the dog, really kind of working out or something, get to listen to a cool guy like you that really is able to like process and think and rewire and think about things a little bit different. How would you go about doing that? Because most of the time people are just they operate that full speed every day, all the time, and then their family gets a wake of it. And we see that throughout history with all the greats. A lot of people they don't have great relationships in their life. I mean, you think of, Steve Jobs, for instance, like he didn't have a spouse or his kids didn't really like him and he was world denting, but at the same time, he didn't really have a strong relationships or legacy that lasted in that way. People respected him, but didn't, you know, say that they were their best friend or something.
yeah, I mean, number one, you have to value it first, right? So the first thing is I have to value my body. I have to value my family. I have to value my financial situation. And I also have to value my relationship with God for those that, like, of faith. And so for me, it's a priming exercise. So like, let's just say it's when I'm done working, right? My wife works from home too, and we're both like in this Airbnb. Our house has been renovated, so it's like the tension is higher, right? Living out of boxes, right? So we have that kind of situation, but it's like reminding ourselves that we're a little out of sort. So I'm going to give my wife grace. She's going to give me grace, but I'm going to prime myself to when I get done working to go engage with my family. I'm going to start thinking about, like, this is a tip for every guy, whether it's you come home from work or whatever it looks like, is start thinking about all the amazing experiences with your wife, how much you love her. Like, I think like how, like my wife is super hot. Like she's so awesome. She's cool. My best friend can't like, I love her. I just want to hug her. I want to hold like, and then what happens is the stuff from work goes away
Mm.
and the shift of my energy is going into her. And so when I walk in, my energy is just different. When I go to see her, she's going to feel she's going to feel drawn to me versus on guard with me. And nobody does this or teaches this, but like a simple thing like that can create better connection at home. Because if we have bad connection at home, we can have bad connection at work, right? So it's certain things like that. And it's even, with our body, like before I get out of bed, I'm getting in this massive state of gratitude where I'm like almost like wiggling like a kid, like silly in the bed, like just I'm feeling my body of like, I'm strong, like I'm powerful, like I'm excited to get out of it. And then I sit up and pray before I even leave my bed. Like there's certain priming experiences so that I can step into with intention how I want to be, perform, and show up, right? With that energy.
You talk a lot about mindset. And I know like people like us that we're obsessed with this stuff, we have great things going on in our life. But then we focus entirely on the things that we're trying to fix that frustrate us, that then lead us into a funk that's a whirlwind of not that positivity. And then it affects our family too, because it brings us home. Even if we try to think about priming that way, it's just it's something that our wiring is that we just look at those bad things. How do you go about creating space for that? Is that journaling? Is that priming where it's like, all right, I'm going home now, turn that off? Like you're just intentionally priming your mind. Like, how do you go about that?
I think you call it journaling, note taking. I have a whiteboard there behind me where I get a lot of stuff out on that. Uh, and here's the deal: I had even a little funk recently, like you just described. So it's good that you mentioned it. And I don't think too often we share the vulnerable times of like when we were failing. But like I'm here in Texas, and it was like super cold. Right when it's cold in Texas, it's like it's like 30s, right? Which is like not like it's like death. It was cold. Um, like like I said, we're not in our house yet. There's all these things. Like my wife was traveling. I had like there's stackable things. I had a cold and like an eye infection. Like I just felt in a pit,
Mm.
right? And I was focused on what I felt like just being in this pit. And I was like, am I depressed? Is this depression? And there's, one target in business that I didn't hit in January either, right? So there's one thing I wanted to hit. Now, there were several other things that were awesome, but I didn't care about those. I cared about, to your
Right.
point, one thing that didn't work out, right? That didn't, it worked out. It just wasn't, it didn't hit the goal that I wanted to. And even just yesterday, I was kind of writing out January and I was like, holy crap, I've made a lot of progress. I was like, things are good. Like marriage is on fire. Like I feel fit and strong. Like everything's actually okay. Right.
Yeah.
And I think there's a great book, and maybe you've read it, by Dan Sullivan, The Gap in the Game.
Mm.
And as entrepreneurs, we just spend so much time in the gap of where we're not at versus looking back at the game. Right. And so that's the exercise is I'll just reflect. All right, what's the last 30 days look like? Right. And all of a sudden, what started surfacing is like massive wins
Mm.
that I just didn't even, but it wasn't the win I wasn't trying for. Right. So it's like, I was like, okay, I'm still winning.
Right.
Let's go February. Right.
I journaled this morning with that, and something that jumped out at me is winners win, and they just keep on winning.
Mm-hmm.
But then we get sidetracked with the things that aren't, and I'm like, all right, stay in that focus. Like, why am I derailing myself with things? And I maybe it could be like past trauma, right? Of like the beginning stages of businesses that were challenging, and it made challenges and made it hard for a relationship, and you're you're making sure it's not going back there, but you're like, all right, stay focused, right?
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
it's not easy to be an entrepreneur, but it's so worth it, and it's to press forward and build those stacking of wins like you've had with building and scaling, companies for a long time. I think is what I think most people need to just kind of get comfortable with that stress and everything. With
Yeah, because the mantra I live by is that I'm always expanding, right? And so when you're always expanding, you're always on a journey, you're always growing, nothing's perfect, and there's always more, right? And so there's a place, and you used the word earlier, I love it's a word of freedom. Acceptance is just accepting that, like, I can do my best and not everything's going to work out. I'm 100% not going to quit.
mm-hmm.
So, and then it's just you get to sit back in this place of peace and operate, because too many people don't operate from a place of peace. When I operate from a place of peace, I listen better, I make decisions wiser, versus a place of fear, scarcity, frustration, right? And so it's like there's this kind of, where does your fuel come from?
Hmm.
Right? Does your fuel come from fear? Sometimes fear is good, man. Sometimes fear is what gets people to move, right? Been doing it since humans were started.
Right.
But fuel from fear can be fatiguing, and that's when we get burned out.
That's good.
But if my fuel comes from faith, because I can look back and go, hey, been there, done that, figured it out, this is just a little different, this is just a different path, I'm going to be okay. I got this, it's going to work,
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to be okay, right? And so exercising that fuel coming from faith, which is way harder, requires way more intention, way more uh, discipline to stay focused in that path. It's easier to navigate. And I think in the beginning, and early entrepreneurs, and I know I did for sure, was like fear, man. Woke up every day like, broke. What's if the company falls apart? February, new month, sales are zero. Let's go. Like it,
Right.
but it's like, oh, that's exhausting. I'm tired of doing that. And then to be in a position to look back and go, hey, dude, I figured it out. Every single year, I keep winning. I keep winning. I'm going to keep winning. And through faith, like, I believe I'm just going to keep winning. I'm just going to show
Right.
up every day, stay obedient to what I'm called to do every single day, and believe that it's all going to work out. Like, health is good, marriage is good, kids are awesome. Like,
Mm-hmm.
let's keep going, right? It just takes maturity and time to do that, I think.
Let me ask you this. I've been really trying to process and think about this more. It's like we're believers, so we have a different perspective of it. And if we really look at the amount of time that our world has been around, we're a little ellipse in this time. Nobody's going to remember us in 100 years. It's just like it's like a whatever type of thing, like the vanity thing that Song Solomon talks about, in a lot of ways. But there's a passage that talks about like seek first the kingdom of God and His righteousness, and everything else will be added. I think
Yeah,
coming along that state of like we're doing things out of fear because we feel like we lack, but really it's like if we're shifting our mindset of like kingdom building, everything else will be added.
correct. That's my
And
favorite verse. It's the verse that I live my life on.
yeah,
Matthew 6:33.
how do you go about doing that? Because you're right now in a phase of your life where you're focusing a lot entirely around like how do I help a lot of businesses succeed, but also men to be that 1% in every area of their life, because there's inbounds in so many areas. There's the blind spots that we all have in so many different areas that we need people and brothers around us to kind of like slap us around and say, hey, what's going on?
Mhm.
Like, get it straight, get lined up. Like, let's go for that kingdom. So it's like trying to think of like the pursuing growth in business that's a vanity metric that's just very small and not world denting. And then, if we're seeking Him, we're going to be added here on earth, but then we're also storing treasures in heaven that don't expire. That's
Mhm.
eternity bound.
Right.
How do you go about that? Because I feel like it's almost at odds in some ways.
Yeah, I think, through prayer and communion, right? So so God is pretty clear on what He wants us to do. Put Him first, love our neighbor, right? So if I can operate from that simplicity, right? Of so if I put in God first, guess who I'm going to go to first with direction? I'm going to go to God first. Right? I'm not going to my wife first. I'm not going to my buddy first. I'm not going to Chat GPT first. I'm going to prayer. And so, I haven't always lived. Obviously, I haven't always lived that way, but that's the answer today, and how I live. And then secondly is like how am I serving? Like, how am I helping and serving? Right. And so sometimes, and I just believe that when we're willing to be obedient, surrender, like if it's put, like it was put in my heart to start working with the youth group at church on Wednesday nights, and I'm doing like a chaperone thing this weekend. Is there a monetary gain out of that? No, I don't care. But God put it on my heart, like, hey, look, these young people look up to you. You're a great example. I want you to get in there. Cool. I'm going to do it. But does that mean that my phone can't ring and I get blessed with something financially that I want? Right. And I was just sharing a story like last week. I had someone call me with an issue like, hey, I need I have this problem I need solved. Let me see if I can solve it. Call this other person, found a solution. And in that deal that I put together, there's an opportunity for me to earn money out of it. Right. I wasn't trying to, but it was like, well, hey, thanks for hooking that up. That pays this. I was like, oh, really? And it's a reoccurring thing.
Mm.
And so that it might be a $80,000 a month thing that I just, goodness of my heart. Yeah, cool. Let me see if I can find someone. Oh, you can do it? Great. And so it's like I'm seeking first the kingdom and as often as I can. And I'm also getting those things added to me.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not trying for that stuff. Right. And so it's like I'm not fighting for clients. I'm not fighting anymore. I'm just like, hey, God, if you want me to work with Nathan, show me. Right. If you want me to work with Jim, show me. Right. And so it takes a lot of trust. And like I said, I haven't always lived that way, but it's a way easier way.
Let me ask you some tactical things around business too. I want to kind of know, like, in your perspective, if after you've been working with a lot of businesses, what are the things that most people struggle with? Because I feel like, let me preface this, is that I feel like it's a buckets of four. One is like they need to know how to do sales, they need to know how to do marketing, they need to know how to do the fulfillment, whatever they're doing, and then they need to know how to lead with systems and automations. And the component of all those things is they need to know their numbers, right? Leads
Yeah.
and then financials. And many entrepreneurs that are struggling, they just don't know what those metrics are, or they just look at their bank account and they're scared to actually know what the number is either. What do you feel like is missing if someone's starting and are also building, but they're not examining what they need to do, and they just feel like things aren't working the way or feel stuck? Like, what are some things that you would do, and what have you seen that's helped fix some of those challenges?
Yeah. What I would say first is like, even if someone had the ability to list out the things that are a priority, like you just listed, they're already like A minus in business, right? Most don't even have a clue. In my experience, especially in healthcare, doctors are not taught, and that was where I felt called into that. They're not taught business.
Hmm.
So going into it, I think the first thing that I look at with all businesses and entrepreneurs or business owners is organization. Where are they organized and where is it a mess? Right? Like the fact that most don't live on a calendar, or they're not disciplined to the calendar that they set. Um, and then it's efficiency, like finding out how they spend their time, right? Like just looking at situations and saying, like, do you have to be there for? No, could you do that over the phone instead of, oh yeah, I could, so really getting some efficiency, because most people's belief is that they're too busy for more, and that's a lie.
Hmm.
And so as soon as we can get them clear that they're lying to themselves, and that we can get super organized and efficient with how we spend our time, just that alone starts opening up the possibility for them to see what else we can do in their business, right? And then it is you mentioned marketing, right? Teaching them messaging, getting clear on, what is it that you actually want to do, right? Like I think when we start connecting people with like their heart and the message versus like their mind and the message, they just convert better. They attract more of the people they want to work with, right? As opposed to like, well, let's just do what that guy's doing. Like we see it with, weight loss clinics or this, or just like, regurgitating what someone else is doing,
Mm-hmm.
maybe not getting the right result because they don't understand the why and the method behind some of that stuff. But that's definitely like 2.0 stuff that I get into with the people I work with. Organization and clarity of what they actually want, I think, is the most important thing. Because once you have that, you can go super fast and efficient.
Let me ask you that with goal planning, because I feel like a lot of times people have an idea of just more, but what do you mean by wanting what they want?
Yeah, I think sometimes I did it with a client yesterday. she's a medical biller, and she's like, I want more practices. And I was like, okay, how many more practices? 12. Great. How many hours a week does a practice usually take you? She's like, probably 10 hours. I was like, you want to work 120 hours a week? She's like, well, no. And I explained to her, I said, right out of the gate, you'll never achieve your goal because subconsciously your brain knows it's not attainable. And not only is it not attainable, but you don't actually, because you don't want to work 120 hours a week. So do we have to hire some people to do that? Well, I guess we got to. So then I start going through this efficiency piece, and really where I usually start today, because it all ends with this, is what do you love and how much money do you want to make? If you tell me what you love doing, because it could be like, hey, I love onboarding, I love closing the deal. Well, cool. Let's hire some people to process the fulfillment piece. You stay focused on the sales side. How much money you need to make? Well, if I can make 300-400 grand, how much you charge? We just reverse engineer. Cool. You gotta find 10 new clients a week or 10 new clients a month, whatever it is. We just put numbers to their mouth, right? Versus what they say, and challenging what they think they want versus what they actually want. Right. So I could say, hey, I want 100 new one-on-one clients. Okay. All right. Well, based on how often you talk to those, right? And you start figuring out like what their model looks like, for example, and you're like, you can't do that. You don't have enough time. Right. Especially it's like, if I want to coach 20 hours a week, that's going to limit how much I can do one-on-one. And I have to start thinking a group and all these, right. So that you understand that process. So it's helping them get clear on what they actually want. And that's why I just start with money, because if it's like, if you could make this much money, would you be happy? Yeah. Okay. Well, let's reverse engineer how we make that much money doing what you would like to do. So you're not doing something you hate, making the money. Right.
Yeah. That's so good, man. That's so good. With everything that you've learned with your family and everything, what are you working toward now? Because you've built companies. What are you personally working on and working toward?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think the top priority for me today is I want to do more with my wife. So she's worked kind of director, Fortune 50 company, crushed it, loves to grind. Like she's just awesome at her career. But probably the last few years, like don't need her income as much. And it's like, we both traveled. So selfishly, I'm like, I want more of my wife. And so I think in my world, helping invite her safely into my world, because she's, for her, she's like, I don't know what you do. You do this in healthcare, but I don't, like it's easy for her to discount why she couldn't fit in. So it's like having those conversations, because I was like, look, I want to do, traveling. I want to travel with you. I want to hang out with you every day. I want to solve problems. Like I want to have fun building and creating with her, versus she does her thing, I do my thing, which is what we've mostly done and always supported each other. And so it's a new shift, and it's saying to her, like, hey, I love you more now than I ever did. And I want to spend more time with you. And, our kids I got one that'll be out of high school in like, a year and a half, and another kid will be out in 6 years. Like I still want to be I want to build something that we can have fun doing for the next 20 something years together, creating and serving. And so that's probably the biggest focus for me. And why, I talk about how important our marriage is in our business and our life, because, whether it's when kids get gone or we get to a financial situation where we don't have to worry about working so much, you got to make sure you want to have fun and spend time. I'm not going to be the guy that's golfing 5 days a week with his buddies and like barely talks to my wife at dinner at night. Like that's right. That's not the life I signed up for. And so how can I bring us closer together in creativity, and building? Because we both like to do that.
That's awesome, man. How can people connect with you further? Where would they find you? How should they connect with you further?
Yeah. I'm most active on Instagram, Adam Lamb 33, and your Facebook or anywhere. Just probably Google me and find me, but Instagram's probably the best spot. Yeah.
Cool. I'll put all those links down below. Adam, thanks so much for joining us on the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. And if you want, before you leave, make sure to grab that training down below around how to build an audience, how to build a brand, try to get more sales and leads. That's going to really help you skyrocket your business. Make sure to check that out, and we will catch you on the next episode.